Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and today I want to talk about the issue of gender pronouns, which I talked a little bit about in my reviews of Star Trek Discovery, because they introduced all those non-binary characters who want to be addressed as they or them, because they don't want to be a he or a she, and I kind of criticized that. And on my other channel I make videos in which I basically poke fun at everything, and so I poked fun at that as well, and so a lot of people accuse me of being a bigot and all of those kinds of things, even though in the videos on this channel in which I explain myself fully, my full view of everything, that I do support the rights of people and all of that, but my issue is a kind of a more technical issue and not a moral one. And some people don't get that, and especially because it's so different in other languages. Like, you view people from other countries with different languages as if it's the same exact issue, but some of the things that you want are even more problematic in other languages. For example, in the Hebrew language, in my language, there are genders to everything. Even inanimate objects have a gender to them, so it's part of the language and it's not possible to change it. So every object is either a he or a she, and people are a he or a she, and even in plural it's a he and a she, not like in English, because in English when you say they, it's the same for men and women, and yet in the Hebrew language it's not the same. It also has a gender, and so this kind of thing is pointless in the Hebrew language and in other languages as well. And that's why I view it as very silly. I view it as something illogical, and in the context of Star Trek it's even sillier in my opinion, because wouldn't they simply invent new words to fit people who are not a man or a woman, especially since we know that there are so many aliens in Star Trek who are either completely genderless or with multiple genders, more than two genders, and so wouldn't by that time period in which they encounter such people, wouldn't they simply invent a new word which would be neutral, or maybe simply change the language to cancel all the genders in the language, so that it will fit everyone? So instead of saying a he or a she, you would simply say he to everyone. It doesn't matter if it's a she or a he. You would just call everyone a he, and then you will solve this problem of people getting offended if it's the wrong gender. And especially when you meet aliens and that kind of thing, and you don't know from right away if it's a he or a she or some other gender or no gender. So of course it should be part of the lexicon, it should be part of the language when you go out and meet all these strange aliens. And so, I made compilations of that on my other channel. And I think it's okay to do jokes as well. Like, I'm against this notion that you're not allowed to do certain types of jokes because it might offend someone. If that's the case, you would not be able to do any kind of humor at all, because most of humor, most of comedy is always based on making fun of something or someone a little bit. And so you cannot completely avoid any potential of anyone ever getting offended, then you cannot really do comedy at all. And so I'm against this kind of attitude that you're not allowed to make any kind of joke of anything because it might offend someone. So I'm not saying we should deliberately try to offend people, but we shouldn't go out of our way to make sure that everyone are so comfortable at all time that we cannot make any kind of silly joke against anyone. And so we would lose humor that way completely. And for the issue itself, I do think it's silly, because they is plural. They is how you can get information correctly more quickly to another person. When you talk about some situation, you want to describe a situation to someone else, and so you use shortcuts basically. Instead of explaining, in that place there is that guy and that guy and that woman and 5 people there, and so you can simply transfer information faster that way, because you can describe the situation quickly. Say there's a bunch of people there that need help, go there, and that person would immediately know there is more than 3 people there. When the language has shortcuts, it's basically a way to transfer information quickly with less words. And so if you want to call for help for someone, you can quickly describe the situation of whether it's a group of people there or one person there. If you're calling an ambulance to somewhere, so you would say they are lying on the floor, and so they would send multiple ambulances, then they will arrive and find only one person lying there, and so that then they will say, why did you say there is a group there? And then they will say, no, I didn't, it's just a person with no gender, with a third gender, and so that's why I had to say they, so that he will not be offended. And so you see the problem with that. There's all kinds of misunderstandings that would happen, and it will take longer to describe a situation if you don't use the normal shortcuts in the language. And so it's just one example of the kind of problems that you create with this. And so why not simply either invent a new word, a new pronoun, or simply decide to use the same pronouns for everyone. Simply decide that you can say, if you're not sure, you can simply say he, about someone, and if it's not really a he, then it wouldn't be offended, because that will be kind of the default. And so why not? Like, why not simply create some kind of default word that you can always use no matter what, and it will fit everyone, and then you won't have to constantly think about it, constantly being afraid of saying the wrong pronoun to someone, that it might be offend that person. And so make things simpler for everyone. Especially, how will you teach language to new kids, to children who don't yet understand all of these issues? Will you really start to teach kids how to determine what kind of gender they're talking to and all of that? So why the need to complicate things? Why not simplify things? And I wouldn't mind changing the language, especially my own language. My language, as I said, is more convoluted. I constantly have to remember each word, if it's a man or a woman, when it's not even people, when it's objects. Objects also have genders in my language, and so as a kid, I remember I was really annoyed at that, because I constantly had to stop and think, wait, is that object that says he or she? Because, depending on the gender of the object, the rest of the words in the sentence also have to be addressing the same gender. And so it's like every word has a gender, and so you always have to think, wait, is that object a he or a she? And I have to kind of say to myself how it will sound right or not right, and then I will know how to say it. And so I remember being really annoyed at that. Before, I just knew it all by heart, and so now it seems natural to me. But thinking back, what kind of silly language is this that inanimate objects have to have genders at all? And so I'm all for totally canceling all of these genders. Simply say that everyone are a he or everyone is a she. I would prefer a he because it's shorter. I'm all for simplifying things, so why not make everything shorter in the language so that you can get information to each other faster instead of slower? And so why not simply say that everyone is a he? And that's how language is, without offending anyone. So I would actually be all for that. So that's my position on that. But using all kinds of different words in those specific cases when the gender is not clear, so you calling people it or they, or words which are not fitted for that, which will just create confusion, and maybe that by itself will also be insulting to people. If I call someone an it, wouldn't that be insulting? So I think it only has the potential even to insult even more than to avoid insulting people. So that's why I think this whole thing is silly. And especially in Star Trek, when we know that they constantly go out and meet aliens who most of the time actually do have males and females just like humans, but sometimes they have some aliens which are different, with no genders or a third gender or 5 genders. And so in those cases, why not have different words for that? And also, how is that being translated into Universal Translator? So shouldn't the Universal Translator automatically translate it the right way no matter how you say it in English, and so you wouldn't even be worried about it? And so all of this issue is really not clear in Star Trek. And in Star Trek Discovery, this is all taking place in the 31st century, centuries after all the other shows. So you mean to tell me that in this time they still didn't invent any new words to describe it? They have to use plural to describe a person who doesn't want to be either a man or a woman, and we have to call that person they, and then it might cause confusion when you explain things to other people. There was a scene when Stamets was talking to that scientist, telling him that he has a child, and then saying they are very much something. And so that scientist kind of looked confused at that. So you said you have one child, so why are you now saying they? And so it just causes unnecessary confusion. And that's why I don't get it. That's why I'm kind of against that, because it makes no sense, and it wouldn't work in other languages, like my own language, in which plural also has genders. And so this will be totally lost in translation. And so can you imagine how it will be for aliens? If you start talking that way to aliens, you would confuse them even more. So I think they should have either said Universal Translator is saying it the right way, or invent new words for the show. And who knows, maybe that would even get into our culture if they actually invented something clever with the language, some kind of clever change, and do it throughout the show. Maybe that would even become a part of pop culture and later get into the whole culture if they actually invented something clever and new and efficient and logical. I'd be all for that. And so that's my full position on this issue, to avoid any confusion, any misunderstandings about my actual thoughts about all of this. So I explained it all in detail this time, so I hope I clarified it. So let me know what you think, and we can discuss all of this in the comments below. I'll be glad to hear your opinion, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.